Good morning, good morning. Well, we are here for the Scotland Rugby News podcast. It's Sunday morning. It is the morning after the night before of the 1872 Cup between Edinburgh and Glasgow. I'm Bruce Aitson from Happiness Egg Shaped, and he is Gavin Harper from Scotland Rugby News. Well, did you see that coming?
In a word, no. But I mean, I said it on Friday. Fair play to Edinburgh. They are clearly capable of these results. I think the frustration is that they're not able to kind of string a run of them together, particularly away from home. But look, they really fronted up. They were obviously hurt after the game at Hampden, and they produced the response that Sean Everett asked for.
It just shows sport in that light that we, podcasts, articles, barroom chats, clubhouse blethers, all those things. So many people spoke to me yesterday, and we did that thing of sucking your teeth. I don't know how it's going to go today. And I have to admit, I've been optimistic before, and I wasn't yesterday for Edinburgh's chances. And I thought Glasgow, strong team, decent conditions. They're familiar with Murrayfield. They're familiar with the big pitch. I didn't see that coming. I have to admit, I didn't see. At one point, I thought it was going to be 3-0. Yeah. And my daughter turned to me and said, what would that be? And I said, well, it would be progress for Edinburgh, because last week they got beat by 19 points. So it's progress. It's just not great for the 40,063 folk that are here watching. But I think the win meant a lot. I don't know who you spoke to after the game. Look at that. I speak of the devil. Daughter arrives. I spoke to Grant Gilchrist after the game, and the big man, he's emotional because it means so much to him. He puts so much into it. He's the captain. He's the focal point. He's the one that gets churned out to do the press conferences and media. And he was emotional after the game because it meant so much to him. And then I said to him, right, what happens next? And, he brought up that C word again, the consistency. And, we've got to go away from home. I think Van got a win yesterday against La Rochelle.
I'm not sure. You might be right.
I think they got a win yesterday. So all of a sudden you're going, oh, right, okay, they're beginning to find. And it was away from home. I think Van beat La Rochelle away from home yesterday. So Edinburgh now, they go into Europe. They've got a week off. They were away for a couple of beers last night. Hopefully,
I can put all our listeners at ease that Van lost heavily to Pau away from home.
Right, that
48-24. The La Rochelle result is clearly been a Christmas dream.
That was Stevie Laurie told me that, so I should have checked my facts. So Stevie was obviously too engrossed in what was going on at Murrayfield. So they've got to go away from home. It's not the URC pressure. Now here's one for you that I was thinking about this morning as I took the dog for a walk around the park. Yesterday, in some respects, in the build-up to it, the performance and the reaction after, it felt like a cup final.
Yeah, it definitely did.
It was like everything was riding on it. And it was just, not to belittle it, it's just a league game. Yeah. It's just that it was between Glasgow and Edinburgh. It was off the back of inconsistency, shall we say. But it felt like a cup final.
You lose that. Like it's just another game element when these teams play, but you're right that it was just a league game. But I think in the context of Edinburgh's season, to finish 2024 with a win, produce a much better performance than they did. All right, the attack still clearly needs a fair bit of work, but defensively they were outstanding. They were broken down so easily by Glasgow at Hampden. And they totally sorted that out. I was listening to the Premier Sports coverage, and Chris Patterson was talking about there being an integrity in the defence, in that they just all showed that complete trust for each other. There was nobody kind of flying out the line trying to be the hero.
There was discipline as well. The penalty count, I've not seen the stats. Top of the Moon will no doubt be all over it, but I didn't I didn't see the ill discipline. I think Scott Cummings was a bit hacked off at himself in the first half when he went offside with a box kick, and you could see him kicking himself. And that's probably one of those ones that Franco gives him a really hard time for, because that was a cheap exit for Edinburgh. But I just, it was the atmosphere was better because the crowd was joined up all the way around, but also because the game was closer, there had to be an atmosphere because a decision, a knock on, a referee's whistle, there was so many little bits that needed, and even some of it was but at least there was some kind of intent, whereas the week before the atmosphere was lost because the game was gone.
Yeah, and that's it. That's what the things we wanted when we sat here on Friday were a close contest and both teams kind of showing what they're about. I think Glasgow did to an extent, but they just couldn't get on the front foot. I actually think, and we said this last week, that I think Mossesi was totally outplayed by his brother at Hampden. So it feels right that we should say he was much, much better this week. I thought he was excellent, and he really fronted up to Sione. And between them, the Edinburgh midfield stopped Sione getting kind of over the gain line time and time again. I also thought that Hamish Watson added a lot. It was obviously disappointing to see Jamie Ritchie go off early on, but I thought Hamish Watson added plenty off the bench. He could quite easily have been man of the match. Luke Crosby was outstanding, and I think look, if Edinburgh, if Crosby scores just before half time, it could be we could be having a totally different conversation, because then you only need, it would have been 10-0 at half time, and they would have only needed 9 points to chase down the 1872 Cup. That obviously wasn't to be in Glasgow. Keep that for another year, but I think for Edinburgh there'll be a lot they can take from that. Look, we've said it time and time again here and elsewhere that it's that consistency. They've now got to back that up. They've got to beat Van. I suspect the next 2 games, Sean and Everett will look to make changes and give others in the squad a go where he can.
Do you think so? See, I'm not sure about that, because they seem like Europe's important to them, and these are 2 winnable games. I'm not sure that, and the Six Nations is coming along thick and fast. I'm not sure about that. I think that, but then I wasn't sure. You and I were exchanging a bit of chat yesterday, because you said no, Edinburgh will go for threes, and I was saying they're going for the corner, and they had the penalty that Ross Thompson kicked, and he looked like he was going for the corner, and then he got a tap on the shoulder. No, we're going for points, and so I'll give you that one grudgingly. I'll give you that one.
I think, in complete fairness, we were lucky to be. We were obviously sat right in front of the Edinburgh coaches box, and when that penalty was awarded, I think there were messages going on, possibly from Sean, that were of the nature of take the points. And I know you were sitting a couple of rows in front, but we maybe just had a slight edge on hearing that at the time. But no,
I was too busy listening to the boys for Paisley Rugby Club slavering. The Paisley Rugby Club boys were well represented yesterday and enjoying their day out at Murrayfield.
And why not to those days between Christmas and New Year, eh?
Yeah, it was great yesterday. The weather was decent. It was enough for folk to be hanging around and be there early. I thought the crowd were excellent. I thought the way it now joins up, it wasn't that long ago where, the announcer was announcing the crowd rather than the players because there wasn't enough folk there. But now to have the crowd joined up, nobody's pitch side. I thought it was great, and the atmosphere seemed pretty festive. People were enjoying themselves. There was a almost relaxed atmosphere. And then I had a few chats with probably half a dozen different people. And you and I have spoken about this before. Yes, there's a rivalry, but it's a really strange rivalry because we want them to, everybody wants the other ones to do well. I spoke to a heap of Glasgow fans yesterday saying, while we dominated last week, we still want Edinburgh to be good because there's a greater goal here. We still want to win the URC, but we want you lot to go well. We didn't like So and all the players, like, they can't hate each other. There's literally brothers playing against each other. And after the game, they're all like, some of them, their best mates are. I think Xander's kids call him Uncle Pierre. So the relationships are so strong. It's really difficult to make it anything more than quite a friendly rivalry.
Yeah, that's it. Like, and I think you probably see a difference in those games, for example, to the Irish Interpros or some of the English Premiership games, and I think we just have to accept that for what it is. Like, that's probably not going to change.
No.
And I think almost moving away from, we've seen the promo pics from back in the day with Al Kellick and Jim Hamilton, a pair of boxing gloves. Like, we don't need that. That's not really that helpful. Like,
Jim never needed boxing gloves. Jim was always a bare knuckle kind of guy.
No comment. I think there's enough YouTube videos of Jim Hamilton going about that people can make their own minds up. Look, it is what it is. I think it's a healthy rivalry, while there is still clearly a want for people to do, both teams to do well for that Team Scotland element.
How was Franco after the game? I've not seen any of the post-match stuff other than the stuff I was doing myself. So I've not seen or heard from Franco. I would imagine he was pretty disappointed.
You would have imagined so.
Yeah.
And I think if that was the message he conveyed to the players, that was very much not the message he told us.
Okay.
I think when he was asked, basically, he said, not fussed. We just ran into an Edinburgh team who were outstanding, and they had, I think the phrase he used was, answers for all the questions. And he said, he was very complimentary of them and of Sean. Said they're a good team, well coached. Sean's a good coach. We expected them to be better than they were at Hampden, and so it proved, and we just couldn't find a way through. So he said, the compliment should be with Edinburgh rather than people looking negatively at Glasgow, which I think is very diplomatic. It's a classy answer. It's a very diplomatic answer for a guy who admitted he wants to win everything all the time. But as he said, they've now lost 3 times in the league, but none by more than 7 points. So the fact that his team weren't anywhere near their best, still picked up a losing bonus point and are clear in second place. Look, I don't think he's going to lose much sleep between now and New Year.
Yeah, he seems like he gets things right. The whole environment is positive and appears to be consistent. And yesterday, I mean, I don't think I've seen Hugh Jones as quiet. You and I spoke on Friday, and I was talking about Tom Jordan. Yesterday he was a servant again. It was, there wasn't really a Tom Jordan moment yesterday that I can remember.
Yeah, you're right.
Hugh Jones kind of went about things. He's busy though. He's looking for as much as he can. Kyle Steyn sat Darcy down in the first half, and had a couple of hands on ball, but Cancelleri didn't really get much of a sniff. Kyle Rowe didn't get much of a sniff. So the dangers for Glasgow were pretty well contained, and the lineouts were probably as inconsistent as I've seen and as I can remember.
Yeah, it felt like there was the kind of bits of their game that you normally come to expect. They just do well. Their set piece functions. Sione gets over the gain line, and then that gives them that platform from which Tom Jordan and Hugh Jones and Kyle Rowe can have a bit of space. But the set piece, both scrum and line out, wasn't that flash. Sione was pretty well marshalled, and then from that, they talked about it last after the game. Their speed of their ball was slower because Edinburgh did a good job at the breakdown, which then meant they were on the back foot. They probably kicked a wee bit more than they're used to. it just all stopped them getting into their kind of stride. So, look, I think we talked about Gilco earlier, and he said before the first game, Edinburgh are a better team than reducing Glasgow a scrap and all that niggle that we're kind of used to in these games. I'm not saying that's what they did, but they certainly did more of that than they did in the first game, where I think they thought they could go completely toe-to-toe in a rugby contest. And I think that certainly helped Edinburgh yesterday, no doubt about that. But I think also the players who underperformed at Hampden, you look at like the halfbacks were really poor and hauled off early. Both of them were much better. Ross Thompson particularly was better.
50-22 was an absolute bit of class.
Yeah, exactly.
Great kick for Ross, considering the week before he looked like he was kicking a flat ball.
Yeah, and that's it. And the back row was like Crosby was excellent. Hamish Watson was good. So there were some, Bohan, and then to bring on Pierre, and I think that's probably the balance that Sean got better this week, was that impact off the bench. We talked about it on Friday, but being able to bring on Pierre and Hamish Watson and Marshall, who had a point to prove, like Paddy Harrison for Dave Cherry, who was very good on his 100th appearance. So, there was a wee bit more about that Edinburgh bench.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of told.
I thought Sam Skinner was excellent as well. The try race now is no longer between Darcy and Duhan, it's between Bohan and Pierre. Who would have thunk it? The loose head props are streaking away. Moment of the day for me, and it wasn't George Horn. It was Pierre Schumann's grubber kick.
Yes, I knew. I was hoping you were going to say Pierre's kick.
I saw him after. He was very chuffed to himself. He had a big.
Rightly so.
He had a big grin on his face. He was very chuffed to himself. I think the boys were giving him a fair bit of stick, but I said to Gilco when I spoke to him, because to lose the penalty try and not really have that time, that minute of a conversion to get the boys together. I said to him, what did you say in the huddle? And he said just that we'd spoken before about we were going to have to show resilience and we were going to have something tough to deal with. So chests out, go head back, let's go for it. And I don't think anybody could have predicted Glasgow making the mess they did at the kickoff.
No.
That's one of those coach ones where you're like, right, brilliant, got a score. Now let's get back down there, consolidate, whatever, go again. And then you do that. But for Pierre to find himself in that position and stick it on his boot, and for Curry to respond, like fair play to Curry to recover that ball, because that could have been, those kicks are the best kick of the game to, what are you doing, man? Like it's a very fine line, or a kick's only as good as its chase, whatever cliche you want to use. But that then led to the build up to Pierre getting over. I thought he was going to go TMO. It must have been clear. From where I was sitting, I couldn't tell, but the ref was confident.
Yeah, it didn't look that clear from any of the pictures, but it was Holly Davidson who called it. Having watched it again, you can hear her quite loudly, confidently give the try. So yeah, but even when Pierre gets, once he's put the magnificent kick of the season in, he then, when he carries for the try, there's no real reason or right he's got to score from where he does. Yeah. So Glasgow, I think, will be disappointed with their defensive effort there, because he's 5 meters out and it looks like they're just going to kind of soak him up and recycle. And Rory Darge is sniffing about for a turnover, it looks like, and then he just sort of propels himself over the line. So, yeah, fair play to Edinburgh, because that resilience is probably something that they've not shown within games very often this season.
It all comes back to consistency again, though. They've shown it in every now and then, but just not with a level of consistency. And this is the frustration. You can almost handle, I'm a Hibs fan, I can handle Hibs being rubbish all the time because that's my expectation. And then every now and then they'll give you a moment of glory and you enjoy it while it lasts. But Edinburgh are kind of the opposite. Our expectation is quite different with Edinburgh. You expect them to do well. You expect them to win. So when they don't, that's when the frustration sort of really kicks in, and knowing that the players that they've got, and I'm sick of talking about Edinburgh on paper, but yesterday there was a lot from both squads. Rory Darge coming back, brilliant. Jamie Dobie gets to start, George Horn comes off the bench, brilliant. Tom Jordan, Sione, Hugh Jones getting to play another game together to gel that. Kyle Rowe back and playing. Darcy and Duan, although Darcy looks pretty sore but played the whole thing. Duan going off, I hope he's okay. Masesi and Matt Curry getting to play together again. Like you said, Ali Price, Ross Thompson improved. Sam Skinner back, played, I thought, very well. Pierre gets a kick up the backside, but reacts, which is the way it's supposed to be. Xander plays, gets a bit of time off as well. I thought there was so many things you called it Team Scotland. For Team Scotland, I know Gregor was there. I saw him, didn't speak to him, but I saw him. He must be reasonably happy with how the last couple of weeks have gone, in that there's been improvement.
Yes, and the other thing I think that Franco touched on after the game was he's hoping to have like as many as 8 or 9 players back from injury by the time Glasgow play Racing.
That's crazy.
And you look at that and say, okay, well, if one of them's Jack Dempsey, that gives him a couple of games before the Six Nations. If they can get Johnny Matthews back, again, same applies. Like, there are, Adam Hastings is probably in that boat too. There are not... The fact they've come through these 2 games and neither team has picked up a serious injury. Sean said last night that he'd spoken to Duan and Jamie Ritchie, who obviously both failed HIAs, and he was confident they would be okay. But the fact they've come through, nobody's got a big injury, and both teams have shown bits of what they are capable of at their best. There's a bit of room for work. I think Gregor will be reasonably pleased. I think Franco won't lose much sleep over the performance yesterday. He knows his team are normally much, much better than that. It was obviously a funny week for them, with Franco basically more or less gave them the week off with Christmas and whatnot. Edinburgh approached it slightly differently. Sean will now see this. I think for Edinburgh, the thing is, this has to be a total line in the sand, and 2025 needs to start with 2 good European wins, and they've got to start winning games away from home.
Yeah, the line in the sand's beginning to look like a ladder.
Yes, it is. They've drawn the lines many times.
Yeah. I hope it is. I mean, the determination appears to be there. Gilco again said, look, talk was cheap, but like what else could we say after last week? It was more about action, and defence is the way to show that, that thing of how long do you spend on the ground, how many, tackles you make. The defence is easy to show your work rate. Attack's really hard.
Yeah.
Because you need the defence to do what you're expecting them to do. Your skills have to stand up under the pressure of fatigue and defence. And there's so many things that go into attack. Defence is the way to show, and they showed that yesterday. And I think that's the big plus, that the mentality was improved from the week before, because the week before you just felt, where's it going to come from? So no, it's a positive thing. They've now got some time off, which for some of them mentally, I think, and emotionally is absolutely needed, because it's been a draining spell from coming out of the Autumn Nations. That's been them all the way through, and now they've got a full week off before they then attack Europe.
Yeah, and I think that's it. They need this week to say, look, rest up, recover well, come back for 2 big European games, obviously different competitions for Edinburgh and Glasgow, but no less important. And basically then most of these players will be straight into a big block of Six Nations. So yeah, it's a big time, and I think the break will be well deserved.
No, it was class. I thought there was so many great things yesterday. Edinburgh Uni Olympians presenting the ball. Atmosphere seemed good. There was heaps of people around. I bumped into Doogie Vipond, who's a hero of mine, but he was just there as a supporter. The band's out the back. It just, over £8,000, £8,400 raised by folk buying their tickets for Doddy Aid.
Yep.
Dave Denton doing a kicking challenge at halftime with James King. Denton, and I think he was about 6 pints deep as well. So fair play to him for getting at least two of them kind of straight. I just thought there was so many good things yesterday. I still feel should be first game and last game of the season, but I'm not gonna win that argument. It's maybe one for another day. Big fella, enjoy. I think this is our last one in 2024.
I think it's very likely to be. Yeah. So all the best for the new year when it comes.
Yeah, and we'll see you in 2025. And I see you're sporting your Doddy hoodie there, so yes, signed up for Doddy Aid, ready to get going January the 1st. It's going to be interesting, and I'm very excited because Anton Dubek's the England captain, which might mean I get to have a chat to Anton.
That will be yes, an absolute fanboy moment for Mr. Egg-Shaped.
Yes, it will be. Cheers, big fella. Great to see you. Subscribe now. £4 for 4 months. Special offer. Get it now. Read all about it. £18 for the year. You can read all the good stuff, and there's heaps coming up. Europe, Six Nations. It's going to be a cracking start to 2025. I'm Bruce Hitchison from Happy and Egg-Shaped. He's Gavin Harper for Scotland Rugby News. See you in 2025.